Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Luening, Horst Luening. I'm the master taster of Whisky.com. And today we're at the FAQs number 12. And the first question this time was from a, well, not a naive, but a so fresh and undisturbed question. Why do the Scottish distillers use reused casks? Why aren't they buying new casks, fresh casks, like the bourbon distillers do? Why are they using second choice old casks? Whoa. Well, he was quite new. He was a novice, and he was new to the business and to the tasting. And well, the Americans, the bourbon distillers, use for their straight bourbons fresh casks because it's ordered by law. Well, there might be some lobbyism where the forest industry said, well, you have to use new casks because then we have to cut timber, and produce lumber and produce casks, and then we have our income. But the bourbon industry is maturing their whiskies fast. They are producing on column stills quite a high ABV spirit of a 170, 180 ABV proof, not ABV proof, so 85, 90 ABV. And this very smooth whiskey has to go into a cask just for 2, 3, 4 years, and then it's a full matured bourbon. In contrast to the Scottish whisky industry, where they have pot stills which produce a very rough, intense whiskey up to 65, 70% ABV. So 120 to 140 proof, US proof. And this rough, raw whiskey has to mature for years and years until it loses its sharp character and becomes mature. And if you have a whiskey set for such a long time in a fresh cask, then the transfer from the cask walls into the whiskey would be very massive. So it's good that the bourbon industry extracts for 2 to 4 years, today most often 4 years, the aromas out of the cask walls, and then you're able to mature for 10 years, for 12 years in Scotland. And in former times, the whiskey for the United Kingdom was bottled with an age of 10 years, and for the continent with 12. And well, today, where the warehouses are quite empty, they try to speed up the maturation in Scotland, and so they use fresh casks as well. There was the first one, I think, was a Deanston called Virgin Oak, and the second was an Auchentoshan American Oak, where they used fresh casks. And well, in the industry, it's quite a habit today to rejuvenate casks, where you scratch out, grind out the inside, the charcoal from the inside of the cask, and then toast the cask again and flame it inside again to produce the charcoal layer, so that this cask becomes rejuvenated like a fresh one. And then you have to be very careful how long you mature the whiskey in such a fresh new cask, not too long. And therefore, there are a lot of no age statement whiskies in the market where the whiskey is matured in fresh, active casks, or the amount of malt whiskey in the mixture of malt whiskies from one distillery contains a decent part of rejuvenated casks, so that the aroma transfer from the staves into the whiskey would be higher. But you have to be very careful not to mature too long in such a fresh cask, otherwise the result would be very oaky, up to bitterness and double espresso, whatever. No? So it's quite, you have to be very careful not to use too many fresh casks. So the question was, why are they using second choice? Well, they use second choice because it tastes better in the end for the Scotch whisky industry. The second and the last question today is, I'm quite often asked, what are my favorite whiskies? Or what is your favorite whiskey? And I have to say, I'm afraid I do not have my favorite whiskey because, well, it is a long journey and there's no final goal, but the journey is the goal. So I'm moving forward from whiskey to whiskey and my preferences from year to year are changing. So in former times, I liked the heaviest smoky whiskies the most. But today, I turned around and walked a few steps back. I still like smoky whiskey, but not the very hefty ones. So if the whiskey is too intense from the smokiness, then I'm sorry. I lately brought a salmon from Iceland with me from my vacations, and the salmon was so extremely smoked, so extremely peaty, that it was uneatable. I had to dump it. It was very expensive. I'm sorry. They do not have a lot of peat in Iceland. So where does the smoke come from? Well, it's sheep dung. So partly it's in my brain. Well, yeah. So smokiness, yes, but I say Beaumont, Lagavulin, Ardbeg is okay. Lefroy as well, but Supernova or Octomore, no, I'm sorry, it's too much. Where I'm heading to is old and mature whiskey, 15 years and up. So here I have the Tomental, 15 years old, partwood finish, which was one of the best, I think, in August 2016. And here we have the Glengoyne, 25 years old, which I have to taste in, well, the next upcoming days. So it has to be mature, really mature. There are a few Nair's whiskey I like, no question. But the older, the better. So there are some like the Tullibardine Burgundy or the Tomatin Legacy, two wonderful whiskies without an age statement on it. But whiskies with an age statement on it, I prefer a lot more. And I like to have them uncolored, of course, and unchill filter and 46% ABV. The unchill filterness is not necessary. No. We did a scientific investigation, a blind testing with more than 100 experts and more than 1,000 samples, and we found out there is a video. I have a video of this scientific investigation, and there's a link on our website on Whisky.com as well in the science part of our website. And this investigation showed that chill filtration does not reduce the quality of a whiskey. In parts of the aroma spectrum, it became better with chill filtration. typically both were inside the normal level, so there were sometimes the chill filtered was better from one sampler, and one time the other. So it makes, in a whole, it makes no difference if it's chill filtered or not. It's just a marketing hype, and well, a feeling that this whiskey is unaltered, so it has to be better. So I do not need the unchill filtered by heart, but I think the 46% ABV is preferable, so that there is some possibility to reduce the strength with water. So age, ABV, I do not have to have cask strength. No, there finding the right strength is always difficult, and I do not like these pipettes and exactly, and no. You see, when I'm diluting the whiskey here, I do it by hand and let it go. So cask strength isn't, well, I take it, but it's no definite need for a good whiskey for me. But I need, beside the age, a good selection of casks. So the whiskey has to add aroma from the cask. If you have these white wine, gavi colored whiskey, typically you only feel the distillery character. There's no oak, there's no spiciness, there's just nothing, just fruitiness and probably smokiness, just distillery character and nothing else. So this is not the whiskey. I like it. I like it when it is well matured in casks. The Glengoyne, 25 years old, I think is a close to 100% matured in sherry casks, if not at all, but there are some second fill in it as well. So those are the bottles which are at the end of my favorite bottles. I had some with an age of 40, 50, 55. I think a Glengrant had been the oldest first fill sherry cask whiskey I had here on my table, my cask table. And this was really bitter and too heavy and too long in the cask. It was well over the top. So typically my favorite whiskies end up with a 25 years old. So from 12, better 15 up to 25, and a maturation in good additional casks, either double maturation, a finishing, or a first fill special wine cask like a Madeira or a port wine. This is what I'm liking most. Special distilleries, well, there are a few, the tier 1 distilleries I like a lot, but I'm very often surprised how unknown distilleries from the big numbers of tier 2 distilleries bring out so excellent whiskies. And if you stay to these first tier distilleries where the names are well known, like Macallan, Bowmore, Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Freud, Highland Park, Glenmorangie, Springbank, just to name the best known from Scotland, then you're missing a lot. Glenfarclas, Linkwood, Longmorn, wonderful distilleries, Mortlach, which deliver excellent single malt whiskey, but just hadn't had the chance to get good marketing for it. Yeah, so this is the kind of whiskey I like most. They are not cheap. They grew in price a lot. They start today at 50 to 60, and they end typically at a 200 for a bottle. And I'm happy. I'm really happy that from time to time I do not have to pay for that whiskey, because I get the bottles from the distributors. I always tell if I get the bottles from them. So you can decide if there is a bias from me or not. Yeah, this is the second and the last question from the FAQ, September 2016. And stay tuned, there's more to come. Feel free to share your comments in our whiskey database about those bottles and the others you tasted already, and feel free to discuss these questions with me in our forum on Whisky.com, and stay tuned. Thank you.